the heroin just kind of stopped working. I literally felt like somebody finally wrapped me up in like a big blanket of love.
Mm-hmm.
We probably have to do a part 2 with you, dude, because to be honest with you, I need the rest at some point. And it's just that we're running out of time.
It's an honor to be able to share about and talk about. So,
that'll be fun.
It'd be an honor. Thank you.
Thanks. We will schedule
stay
that.
tuned.
Stay tuned, guys. Yeah, part 2.
Yes. Right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's an honor, truly.
Welcome back to the Hopeaholics Podcast. I'm your girl, Natalie Eva Marie.
And I'm Chad Carlson, and you're listening to the #1 addiction and mental health podcast.
And you guys, if you or a loved one is struggling, make sure you head to askevamarie.com or chaddick.com and chat with one of our AI companions 24/7.
Or text the number right here on the screen.
Together, we are breaking the stigma around addiction and mental health.
And fighting the fentanyl epidemic.
Now, let's get into the episode.
People literally, die.
Yes.
Because they don't have the right information.
Correct.
Families don't know what to do, which can enable that, or just so much innate suffering that doesn't need to be there.
Yeah.
Because they don't have the insight, So.
And that's like why this podcast exists, because people, after my son-in-law died, and after he died, it's like, and I know I have all the information.
Right.
I don't have all the information,
right.
but I have I have enough.
Right.
Information.
Yeah.
But the thing is that even when when it's a family member, you still, as a parent of an addict, I'm a parent of an addict. I oftentimes make the wrong decision, even though I know that I should be making a different decision.
Right.
Because my heart gets involved.
Of course. Yeah.
So even somebody like me, and that's why it's important to say on this podcast, even somebody like me, when I'm dealing with that kind of crisis, I need professional intervention. I need help to help me make the right choices and not the choice with my heartstring.
100%.
And think about it. That's someone that is well versed in the disease, because not only do you have it, but you also have been in the business for 25 years, owned your own treatment center for 23. So it's like you're in clinical meetings, you've done therapy, you know the just and the crux of this.
The nuances of all of it.
Yeah.
Nuances
and then
of it all. But my brain still tells me, I don't want my child to die.
Yeah. It's the balance of being in the subjective versus the objective.
Yep.
And the subjective is where all the emotional variants are going to be involved. You know what I mean? And get enmeshed with that. And those are powerful variables that definitely can influence what you do and why you do it.
Yep.
Opposed to if it was somebody else and you're absolutely in the objective, you're like, no. Black and white, bullet points, here's what you should do and here's why.
And the reason why is because we're going to raise their bottom. We're going to emotionally, there's so much you can do.
Yeah.
And I disagree with what our old podcast host used to say. I think that people should listen to the interventionists, and I think that I do believe interventions work. I do believe that help is available for people even before they're ready for help.
I agree with that.
Because what we can do is make that help, we can make them want that help quicker.
Yeah.
Because of the knowledge that we have to bring their emotional bandwidth basically hit their fucking bottom much faster.
Or how many times have we heard people that do have an intervention or something happen, or they go to treatment when they so-called are not ready yet, but a seed is planted at some point.
Something's planted.
And something, and you don't know when that seed or when that light bulb or something that you hear pops and goes off, and then you're able to grasp the understanding and there is a solution.
I could agree with you completely. And I absolutely, I've done them. I still will. I haven't done one in probably a little while, but I've done a lot in my past. And, the only thing that I personally don't adhere to or agree with is the kind of traditional intervention model, which you would see on that show Intervention all the time, which I got my own thoughts about that. We're on that rabbit hole. Okay. And which is regarded as the Johnson model. Okay. And that's where the traditional families are gathered, right? It's preemptive. The individual struggling didn't know, they weren't aware.
Yeah, you're getting ambushed.
Essentially, yeah, they're getting ambushed, and then basically hardline ultimatums. Right?
Yeah.
So basically, this is what you're doing wrong. This is how your addiction is harming me personally, right? And if you don't get this help, I'm basically cutting you off or walking away. Okay. Now, when you just step away from that objectively, logically, does anything about that, right, objectively now, seem inviting, right, or incentivizing in terms of like, wow, I've just filled up with all these just positive emotions, et cetera, et cetera. No, I think for a lot of people, and I get it, with some people it works. I understand there's outlier scenarios, right? But I think a lot of people, it just brings to fruition tons of toxic shame, right? They're already riddled with. So when I do them, I have a little bit of that model, right? But I kind of, I alter it a little bit. So instead of having people sitting down with letters on, and I get their pain is viable too, and they have a right to their own subjective experience with how the addiction is affecting them too. And believe, I'm not mitigating that at all, or minimizing that at all. But instead of saying like, hey, if you don't do this, et cetera, or, all these things that you've done to hurt me, instead, like exactly what you're saying poignantly, is I have them go down memory lane with the person struggling with addiction. So instead of like, this is what you've done and how it's hurt me, instead it's like, I want you to remember when. Remember when we had this moment together. Remember when we did this as a family. Remember on your 9th birthday, right, when this happened. What's the point of that? You're bringing the person into an emotional context, right, of their authentic self, who they truly are. Very much separate, mind, body, spirit, right, from the individual that's on the receiving end of the disease and as it's progressed, okay? And in my experience, right, I found that to be way more not only inviting but nurturing, and therefore incentivizing to get the person to want to understand fully, right, but to take that next step, right? Making it as warm and, and again, emotional context, but less stressful is the main thing, okay? Because obviously a lot of things happen when somebody's in active addiction, right? But one thing that happens when the frontal cortex, that's logic and reasonable and rational forward critical thinking, as that starts to get shut down and atrophied, okay, one of the systemic impacts from that is a person loses their own capacity to recognize just how impaired they are.
Right.
Okay.
What's crazy is, so that's the addict, right? You just described the addict. The crazy part is that this disease doesn't stop right there.
Right.
And the families, for whatever reason, even though they're not using drugs, but the insanity that of trying to help them and do and all this stuff, they start to lose the frontal cortex or the frontal lobe, the objectiveness
100%.
on what
You're absolutely right.
on what to do. I mean, it's crazy because oftentimes, I mean, that's why there's Alcoholics Anonymous and there's Al-Anon, because the family members need to get help too.
Absolutely.
And it's one thing, and I do actually kind of agree on you. The Johnson model might not be the best model. There's lots of other models out there. But if the family doesn't also get help, and I don't like the fact that the family blames the addict for their problems,
Right?
Because I'm not the only one. Like I might have been just off on my own, just causing chaos, and they're the ones sitting at home worrying about me. I wasn't even really, so I wasn't like directly in there, just in their face, yelling at them and affecting them, but they were being affected because they were worrying about me and not taking care of themselves.
Right.
So I mean, that's the one part about interventions, though. It's like your loved ones have to sometimes accept the fact that you potentially can die, because this is a fatal disease. This is a deadly disease.
Now more than ever, obviously.
Yeah.
Now more than ever. And they need to get help. They need to get their own help.
Independent.
Of you. And I like your model, man. I like them.
Thank you.
I like anything more positive.
Yeah. I again, like when somebody's frontal cortex is not firing all cylinders, right? They're already overloaded and stressed. They just walk into a room, all these people that they love, right? And they're already feeling all that toxic shame, right?
Yeah, it's already me like fight or flight.
Absolutely.
And it's like, fuck you, I'm out.
That's me.
Yeah, I know.
I'll be like, you walk. They've tried to do
Ain't
intervention.
today. Not today.
Not today.
Catch me if you can.
Yeah,
Like, feet
basically.
don't fail me now.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay, but it's also to understand the state of being that they're in, right?
Sure.
The part of the brain, we'll get more into this, that's in control is not that part of the brain.
Sure.
It's not the linear logical part of their brain. And that part of the brain is saying, hey, you know what? We need this to survive.
Yeah.
Okay? So it's like, okay, I'm just going to, okay, yeah, you're upset and I'm upsetting you, so I got it. 1 A plus B. Okay, cool. So, okay, I'll go. No problem. No, that's ridiculous. That's asinine. That most time that fails. It doesn't work.
Asinine. That's a good
That's
one.
a great one.
Yeah.
I'm gonna use that one.
Yeah, my like grandma used to say, that's like the only cuss word, and it's not really a cuss word. It's
No.
just, but it had the word ass in it, so I always thought it was a cuss word.
Can hide it in there.
Yeah, asinine.
But I think it's also important to understand that it goes both ways. Like every individual is going to respond differently to every scenario, and every family approach is going to be very, very different. And that's why it's like the same with like going to therapy. You're having to find like the right fix of what works for you, as well as that's why sometimes AA might not be whatever. Then you go to NA or CA or whatever. Even though in the crux of it, it's the solution is really fairly much the same, but it's different approaches. Because I think the best thing, that lady that came up to me in the gym that, I forget her name, but I'll keep...
Sahar?
No.
Oh, okay.
I'll keep her anonymity because I thought it was like the most... it was just great. Her spouse is an addict, obviously does the 12-step, is in the program, but then she had mentioned, because she listens to the podcast, and she was very vocal to me about how she goes to Al-Anon. And I was like, that is beautiful. That is amazing. Like for people to understand, because I don't think a lot of people have the knowledge for themselves that are not the addict of being able to have some type of support system or group to feel like it's out there for themselves too. Because I think a lot of people, like especially parents, get into their own feelings of like, what did I do wrong? How did I fail them? Regardless of maybe they did as raising their child, but let's say they didn't. They go through like this terrible feelings of they failed, when, as we all know, yes, of course we can have trauma that has happened and that can weigh in very significantly later on in life, but you have the opposite where, like you were saying, Chad, is like at some point in time, regardless if we're talking about addicts or not addicts, it's like we have control over how we respond to people and how, like, you not moving the way that I want you to move or like act the way that I want you to act. That's me trying to play God. So I have to take care of me and make sure that I'm good, I'm happy, and not base my happiness upon somebody else.
Yeah, I agree completely. And what is that? In the essence, that's like a framework for codependency, right?
Totally.
And now I'm not going to say that other moments or scenarios or dynamics where that was not presenting in the family prior to somebody, falling into addiction. Sure. Yeah. But the majority of the time, right, that propensity for codependency was already existing.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right. Prior to the person even being exposed to drugs.
Yeah.
Or alcohol, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also like what you brought up too, like, yeah, sometimes like the intervention is not just going, again, adhering 100% to that Johnson model. It's also like me inquiring, taking a little bit of a deep dive into the family dynamic. Because a lot of times that happens. Like I go to treatment and then the first instinct a lot of times, especially if they're younger, I'm going to go back home, right?
Oh, right.
Okay. I personally believe that the person staying in sober living and starting to find a sense of autonomy and individuation is probably a way better course for them.
Sure.
Number one, first and foremost, but number two, even during those intervention moments, right? It's like, what is going on in the family, right? Because a lot of times it's like all about the addict. You did this, you did this. It's like, well, wait a minute. And it's not about like to demonize anybody, okay? But how much of your behavior, right, played a role in the environment, right, that 100% perpetuated that person falling into addiction to begin with. Okay, so there's a much bigger picture that emerges, right, if you're willing to take a look at it. But you have to have somebody to guide you to do that as well. Because a lot of people aren't, they're too close to it. It's too subjective. So they're not even going to be thinking that way. For
sure. Yeah. For sure. And like, do you wanna look at yourself? I mean, you so like a parent will feel that stuff. They'll feel like, what did I do wrong?
Yeah.
But the fact of like actually looking at it and being like, and the truth is nobody really does anything wrong. I mean, yes, that's actually, I take that back. There's some horrible parents out there.
Yeah.
I didn't have that experience.
Right.
My parents were actually really good. I just had the disease.
Sure.
And my dad worked a lot, so I had, and my parents weren't knowledgeable.
Right.
My parents never drank.
Right.
They didn't smoke cigarettes, or neither one of them have ever smoked pot.
Yeah. Very conservative.
Yeah.
Say the least.
So they didn't even suspect.
Right.
And I was 14, 15 years old, full-blown meth addict.
Wow. Yeah.
No idea. None.
It seems crazy, right, that could be that way, but yeah. Yeah.
This episode is brought to you by Wolfpack Bags. This gear is meant for anybody, gym, lifestyle, to anybody that's on the move. I mean, I like to say that us here and everybody that tunes in, we're not average. We're always a wolf. They have all the goods that you need, especially for anybody that is looking for a bag to carry their meal prep, a lunch pail, anything like that. They have you covered. So once again, go to wolfpack.com, use the code Hopeaholics, save 10%, and join the pack.
Yeah. So.
Well, I want to get into a little bit about like the genetics that we were kind of talking about off.
Okay.
Off the record, off the air.
Yeah, off the air, because it is fascinating. One, I guess the main question that a lot of people will throw out there, especially to the addict, where it's constant, even now, because I'll see it on social media of people saying that it's a choice. Right? Our disease.
Get me started.
Yeah. Where, I can't remember the analogy that I heard, but they broke it down very, very good with that type of question, because a lot of people that do not understand the disease, because it's very difficult to comprehend. Like, if you have cancer, it's easy to see because you can go to the doctor and you can actually see a scan of something that is trying to kill and destroy your body and your cells. With alcoholism, or drug addiction, it's very difficult, besides the fact of like cirrhosis of the liver or something that is like, you can actually see someone that's happening to. But how do you respond to family, or especially coming into your office or something, about their child or spouse, significant other, saying, why can't he stop? This is just a choice.
So great point. I could literally talk for 4 hours on this alone, and that's what unfortunately makes it one of the, probably, if not the most confusing, right, and misunderstood disease that's out there, in the way that it presents, right? Okay, because when you look at it from a surface level, right, it's like, okay, wait a minute, what's to even discuss here? You went to the liquor store, you did this, right? You facilitated these relationships, you called the connection, you made the choice to do it. So here's the thing, a decision is being made. Absolutely, obviously, that's undeniable, right? Okay, but who's making that decision? What part of me, what part of my brain, right, is more operative at that juncture, right? That's what I mean when I say who's making that decision, okay? So when people say, is it a choice? No, I don't believe it is. I don't think it's that simple. I don't think we choose addiction. I think we fall into it, right? Especially what happens, right, when you start ingesting chronically drugs and alcohol, okay? And just like we'll get into the genetics thing too, like even the genetics, like is it genetic? Kind of a tricky answer. It's like yes and no, okay? I'll explain a little more of that in a minute. But, like I was saying on the first episode when I was here, like when you go down to Skid Row, right, and you see these individuals and they're suffering perpetually, right? Okay, who would choose that? Let's start first and foremost, right? We're not wired that way. You know what I mean? Not consciously, not even just biologically as human beings. We are wired for what? Survival. We are wired for self-preservation. And what you see in all these individuals out there struggling, you see the complete absence of what? Self-preservation. Okay, so that's the first thing that should be like a huge alarm, right? Like a huge blimp in the sky saying, hey, acknowledge that. There's something wrong there. Something is misfiring. Something is breaking down, right, within that individual, obviously within the brain. Is addiction a brain disease? 1,000%. Does it affect you in all these other areas and facets of your life? Also, yes, 100%. But no doubt, it is 100% a brain disease.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, again, like a choice is being made, but the part of the brain that's making that choice is not the part of a brain that we associate with our humanity, okay, which is our higher self, our higher consciousness, right, which is derivative of the frontal cortex, the logical part of our brain. It's a big part of our brain behind our forehead, right? And that is the part of us that makes us most human. It's the part of the brain that governs empathy, impulse control, emotional regulation, emotional intelligence, right? Critical thinking, forward thinking. Forward thinking as in, well, if I make this decision here now today, it's going to have this kind of impact 2 days from now. Nah, I don't want that impact or that consequence. So therefore, right now in present time, I'm not going to make that decision. It governs all of that. Also responsible for attunement. You know, like my ability to read the room, right? It also governs things like mirror neurons. Like, in other words, my ability to kind of see myself through your affect, your facial expression, right? Like if I'm doing a talk at a conference or something like that, yeah, I might have my subjective, perception of how well I'm doing giving the talk, but I'm looking out the audience, I'm seeing really how they're receiving it, maybe how I'm communicating, being mirrored or reflected back to me. So all of that is governed by that part of the brain, okay? So when they say to me, hey, Geoffrey, like, why are they choosing this? That's where I have to kind of sit them down and break down, they're not choosing it. At least not the part of them, right, that that you've known your entire life, right? I.e., again, their sense of autonomy, right, and individuality, okay? And then at that point, I think always one of the most powerful things to do, like I was saying earlier, is education, okay? It's like, this is an endemic we are dealing with, right? Addiction as a whole, especially with the fentanyl. And yet, there's a complete, utter lack of communication across the board. And not just with families, right? But like I was saying earlier, and people die off that lack of education. They die off the lack of insight, the awareness. So it is absolutely vital, right, to explain that and to break that down. And generally when I do that, you see like somebody's energy shift so emphatically, right? From being stressed and even angry, maybe upset, to like, oh, wow, oh my God, like I really had no idea, a more spark of empathy. Because like you were saying earlier, if you have cancer or Crohn's disease or this or that or whatever, diabetes, it's happening to you. You can't control it. So therefore, you are worthy of and deserving of sympathy. But if you're choosing something, no, we're not going to award you that. We're not going to award you that. So we're going to put you in this category as you're just this nefarious, maladaptive individual who's unworthy of love, caring, and any kind of sympathy, right? When you really zoom out and objectively look at addiction, it would be so drastically different across the board, from how, from policies to laws, how the government looks at it, what kind of funds are appropriated where in the way of resources, to down to just how society deals with it, all the way down on a micro level to what's done modality-wise, even in a treatment center. Okay, so to kind of full circle answer your question, break that down and make sure they absolutely understand the nuances of that, okay, to kind of create that shift for them so they can step out of the anger, and their subjective experience with it. And therefore, okay, now I'm seeing this objectively for what it is. Now let's go to plan B and what we're going to do to help the person, Yeah, and you want me to go more into like genetic thing too, or?
Sure.
Okay, so, when people say, is it genetic, right? Because I think people get indoctrinated with that all the time. Of course it's genetic, of course it's genetic. Well, if something is inherently genetic, it doesn't skip generations, right? So if addiction was genetic in that regard, grandpa has it, dad's going to have it, grandson's going to have it, right? There's no skipping generations. But with addiction, you see that all the time, right? I've had clients come up to me after I'll do a certain group, right? They'll come up to me, it breaks my heart, in tears, like, Jeff, I understand all this now for the first time, okay, but why me? Why am I going through all these struggles and suffering with my addiction? But my brother over here, right, he's Johnny Perfect over here in the corner, no addiction, no adversity, he's thriving. Why am I like the black sheep of the family, And again, because it's not hereditary in that regard. Okay, so, but genetics are involved. So what's the answer? It's the answer in the study of what we call epigenetics. Okay, so let me give you a breakdown of that. Basically, these are like genetic predispositions, genetic markers, called genetic likelihoods regarding somebody developing, right, a disease. Okay, and they don't directly alter or affect your DNA per se. If I was to give you an example, I don't know, I always think of this. You've seen like Back to the Future?
Yeah.
Right, Michael J. Fox is like, always hitchhiking rides, hold on the back of a car on a skateboard.
Yeah.
Okay, think of epigenetics in that regard, right? They're just clinging on, right, but not directly affecting DNA in that regard. Okay, so they become what we call predispositions, like I said, genetic markers, higher likelihoods, right, that you might develop, right, into a disease. Okay, but it's not determinate. Okay, if something is genetic, you have that gene, you are getting that disease. No two ways about it. Nothing you can do about that. Like muscular dystrophy is an example of that. If you have that gene, you're getting that disease. Okay, not the way it works again with epigenetics. Okay, so what essentially causes gene expression? What causes those maybe higher likelihood, or again predeterminate things, right? Predisposed things. Excuse me. What turns them on? What causes what we say gene expression? And that's the environment. What is going on in the environment? Okay, in the way of trauma, stress, things like that can cause those genes to turn on and express themselves, and now somebody has the disease. Okay, that's how it works with addiction. Okay, but and it's such a fascinating thing. I'm so enthralled with it. It's literally riveting. But we know that we carry ancestral experiences, right, inside us, right, in some of our genetics, right. So even some of the adversity, right, that is caused by people because of what they went through in the environment can show up 20 generations down the line. They've done studies on that, on how food scarcity in Sweden and things like that has affected the ratio in the population of type 2 diabetes in the population, right? All of that is connected to epigenetics, okay? Even, back up for a minute too, even the idea that a certain race of people are just inherently addicts or alcoholics. I'm gonna use the same word again, asinine. Right? Just because somebody is indigenous, Native American, they can't handle their alcohol, firewater, all those stigmas and whatnot. No, ridiculous idea. Or even like my people.
Sure.
What do they say about the Irish?
Yep.
Right? A bunch of drunks. Okay. If you even just think about that there's no makeup for that whatsoever. Okay. But also epigenetics. Okay. So you take the indigenous people, and they have arguably one of the healthiest forms of lifestyles on the planet, tribal living, right? One with nature, okay, healthy enmeshment with nature. The child has amazing attachments with one or both parents, but also, connection to the whole tribe, all of that. Okay, so thriving as a people, right? But then you strip them of that, you take away their pride, their dignity, you rape them, pillage them, annihilate, completely mitigate and repress their culture, okay? Cause them all that kind of stress and trauma. And then, systematically they start to get exposed to what? Alcohol, right? And back in the day, it would have been like laudanum, which is a mix of alcohol and opium in one bottle. Okay, so how does that show up generations down the line? Well, okay, no, it doesn't mean that every generation obviously is going to become an alcoholic, but how it does show up, and same thing with the Irish and their oppression by the English and whatnot, is I might have a higher tolerance for alcohol before I've ever even had a sip of it, opposed to the average, the guy right next to me, okay? And that is how those epigenetic markers show up, okay? So I got that in me. Does that mean, again, I'm determined to be an alcoholic? No. Or an addict? Absolutely not. But you take that predisposition and you expose it, right, to childhood adversity or childhood trauma, and that's what causes those genes to turn on, okay? So already, again, before I've had any consumption whatsoever of alcohol, I already have that higher tolerance, which is like what? It's rolling out a red carpet for alcoholism. Okay, does that make sense? So that's the genetic aspect of it. That's what we call epigenetics, and it's not limited to addiction either, right? Like I've shared with you guys, I have Crohn's disease, which is an autoimmune disease.
Yep.
I got 4 siblings; they're absolutely fine. Okay, but my dad died from an autoimmune disease. My uncle, his brother, also died from an autoimmune disease. Okay, the right conditions and circumstances, turn those genes on.
So is that why Johnny's brother is soaring and doing fine and has no addiction or no problems, and then there's him?
Absolutely. And even that can get really confusing, especially for the person struggling with it, right?
Sure.
And it's like, well, wait a minute, we are brothers, right? So we should have
same DNA,
right? And we should also, therefore, if we're brothers, right, and there's some other weird circumstance going on, we should have also the same collective experience in terms of our upbringing. Wrong.
Totally.
No two children ever have the same experience under one roof.
What
about identical twins though that actually share the exact same DNA?
Right, and it's funny you bring that up because I've actually seen that in the exact same scenario, ironically, that we're talking about, where one twin, right, heavily struggled with opioids, right, and the other, nothing. And literally out there seemingly thriving and whatnot. But again, sometimes the surface level can be a little bit deceiving too, right? We have somebody who's really struggling drastically with drugs and alcohol, and obviously in their life has been pervasively getting worse, of course. And the other person, well, they're not using, so they're great, they're healthy, obviously. No, and I tell clients this too, who are in that scenario, like, why, my twin or my brother, like I was saying. Well, if you, not always, but a lot of times, most of the time, if you do a little deeper dive into their life, right, you see some of that stuff show up. Just because it doesn't present manifest in terms of addiction doesn't mean that their own traumas, their own subjective experience isn't present in their life. A lot of times you might see that in codependency. You might see that in toxic relationships and things like that. You might see it in just a chronic kind of sense of underlying inferiority. That they're always struggling with, So it doesn't mean that they're kind of scot-free in that regard.
So in my particular case, right, as far back as I can remember, I've never been comfortable in my skin.
Yeah.
Like I go all the way back. Like I was predisposed
Sure.
to this disease. It's not like a lot of people in my family have it, but it does exist, right? I have an aunt, a great aunt that was a full-blown alcoholic, ended up shooting herself with a 22 in the head. I have other cousins that have the disease as well. It doesn't thrive. It's not like thriving in my family, but the ones that have it, we got the real one.
Got it bad.
We got it bad. But so for me, I feel like I always had this, right? I was predisposed, but then you add trauma on top of that, like being molested.
Yeah,
that's a trauma. And like and you could say that too, like we could go to Johnny and his brother, right? Johnny and his brother might have had the same, and his brother might be predisposed to it as well, but
definitely.
But Johnny had the trauma that this brother didn't have, and whatever it was for me, it was like when I got like I was searching for something at 12 years old to change the way I felt.
Yeah.
And at 13, and it wasn't alcohol, and it wasn't marijuana, because I did both of those before I ever did my drug of choice.
Okay.
I would have probably never got addicted to those because I didn't really enjoy them that much. But man, when that meth went in my body,
that was it.
I arrived.
Yeah.
I was like, this is how everybody else feels.
Right.
This is how everybody else feels.
Yeah.
And then that was it. I mean, honest to God, for me, that was it.
And so even in that, you look at it, right? And sometimes it's so obvious that we miss it, right? Okay. Why is a 12-year-old thinking that way or seeking that, right? Why is a 12-year-old child, he's a child still, right?
Not even a teenager.
Not even a teenager. Why are they self-medicating at that age, right? And if I'm doing a group somewhere at a facility and I'll ask people, like, when did you start? Believe me when I tell you the majority, right, is under the age of 15.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's not a random thing. That's not an outlier scenario, okay? So when you have that genetic predisposition, right, you have the adverse childhood experience, the trauma, okay, that creates adaptation, that creates changes. It not only arrests development, it alters development psychologically, neurologically, physiologically, especially in regards to the nervous system, right? So that, I'm 13 years old, right? And I got me and I got, Johnny whatever from down the street, okay? And, I think I said this the other day, he comes to me and he says, hey, I got it in my older brother's weed stash. Let's go smoke pot. Okay, let's do it, right? First time for both of us, okay? We both get high. Go get some pizza, some ding-dongs and whatnot, right? Then we go back home. Okay, great experience. We're laughing, whatever. We both go to sleep. We both wake up in the morning, right? Right away, I'm thinking, that weed was awesome. I want more. Right away, first thought, right? Came to me, right? I didn't have to work to get there. It was already there. It was like innate. Johnny's waking up. He's not even thinking about that. He's thinking, oh, man, I'm a little groggy. Okay, but shit, I got football practice today. I want to take Betty to the prom, right? Oh, God, I got Mr. Clark's math test at 3 o'clock. Shit, right? Boom, going right back into his life. Okay, so am I just choosing it? to focus on the marijuana where Johnny is prioritizing other things. Already is this the opening of a Pandora's box, the emergence of my soon-to-be nefarious character, right? My maladaptive self, my defective self. Again, asinine, ridiculous in idea and conception. No, I had a different experience because my brain is wired differently than Johnny's.
Yep. Starts
there. I tell people all the time, right? It's like if you had to like compartmentalize addiction, like how would you describe it? And say, oh man, that's hard. I'm long-winded to begin with. Right? So I would say a pathological saliency. That is, I think, the most kind of poignant way I could describe it. Okay, meaning addiction begins as a disease of escape, euphoria, right, and genetics and pleasure, but it evolves. And this is the part people miss incessantly. It evolves into a disease of volition. Let's step back and really think about that for a minute. A disease of volition, a disease of decision making. And there's nothing else out there like that in the world, unique to addiction. And can that exist? Can there actually be a disease of decision making? Answer: yes.
The closest thing that I can come to that is similar to, because this is a decision as well, is and this happens to many diabetics, right?
Sure.
And because this disease lives in the most primitive part of our brain, where survival,
absolutely,
food, sex, like we'll choose meth or whatever our drug of choice is over food and sex, the two most important things in this world.
Yeah.
And I say that because for humanity to live on, you have to have sex, and you have to eat. You have to eat to have sex.
Ding dongs and reproduction.
Ding dongs and reproduction. But a diabetic craves sugar, even though they know
it'll kill them.
It will kill them.
Yeah.
And my dad is the biggest example of this, and he's the reason why I was able to put this analogy together, because I'm like watching my dad, who is a full-blown diabetic, like insulin dependent, could not say no to a fucking donut, to the point where he would drive to the donut store. And my dad and I used to have partner desks when we first started Hope by the Sea. He would, behind everybody's back, go to the donut store, sneak his donuts into the office, put them in his drawer, and when I walked out and nobody was looking, he'd open up his drawer and he would take out his piece of his donut, and his blood sugar would be fucking through the roof.
So look at that right there. Now, that's your dad in donuts, right? So he doesn't get typecasted as, again, this defective, characterized, nefarious individual because he's eating donuts, but nevertheless it can kill him.
Yeah. Right.
So it's not any less lethal or invasive in that regard. Okay. But look at that for a minute. Okay. Your dad knows that if I eat these donuts, it's going to spike my sugar, which could potentially lead to what? Death, diabetic coma, amputation.
All of it.
All of the above, right? And yet I do it right there.
Yet I make a decision.
Right? Oh, exactly. But where is that decision derived from? And this is where, again, if everybody understood what I'm going to explain and break down now, I think the entire world would reorganize itself around how we look at addiction. Even down on a modality level, right? Okay, and I'm not trying to get out like my high horse or my pulpit, right? Okay, but if I had a dollar bill for every single time I've walked into a facility, right, okay, with somebody who is struggling with addiction, lived it, now they're in treatment, right, who was still so completely unaware, right, uneducated to what addiction really is, I would never have to work again. And I don't know how you see that. I see that as absolutely fucking unacceptable. Unacceptable.
Yeah.
Across the board. It is my responsibility as a clinician, it is my responsibility as a proprietor of a treatment center to make sure that I'm as well vetted and well organized and educated as I possibly can be. These are people's lives we're talking about, right? Okay. But even on the person struggling with addiction, how much additional compounded suffering do they experience, right? Because they know the reactivity of their disease, right? They know the consequences, all the above, right? But the nuance, the things that are innocuous with addiction, the why, right? And I'm so grateful. I always say, thank you, God, that I get to be used as God's instrument to help people come out of that. And I see like the tears, and I see even the emerging relief that goes, okay, so, oh wow, like I can give myself permission to forgive myself. I'm not a horrible person. It's not as simple, right? It's not as black and white, right? Okay, so all that. But, back to the whole thing, the difference in brain chemistry, right? Okay, I said like it starts off genetics, pleasure, right? And then it evolves into disease of decision making. Okay, even with your dad, right? Let's go back to that just for a second. Okay, what is he trying to achieve there? Is it really the donuts and the sugar, or is it something else? No, it's not the donut. It's what the donut gives him, which is an influx of dopamine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pleasure.
That's what it is. So even right there, look at some of the connections right there genetically, right? Like you struggle with addiction, right? Your dad didn't, but he struggled with his own addiction of sorts, didn't he?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. And all of that, if you wind it back, what's going on there? A lack, right, of dopamine. Okay. And I'm talking about like day to day, chronically, specifically what we call the D2 receptor with dopamine. Okay. And why is that? Why are certain people innately lacking that versus somebody else? Why is Jeff lacking that versus Johnny right at the end of the street who doesn't, right? And that's because of our environmental experiences. And genetics play a role in that too, right? Okay. But, I said with addiction, I said psychologically, mentally, emotionally, neurologically, physiologically, okay? And I always like to kind of break it down like that, if I may, compartmentalize it, So let's talk about like the obvious, the psychological, the mental, okay? Well, what are our most crucial years of human development? Essentially birth to like 6, 7, 8 years old, give or take. Some debate on that, but more or less, okay? That's when I am at the most fragile, right, and most malleable, right, to development, okay? And part of that is how I construct my psyche, right? My schema, as we would say clinically. Like, where does that derive from? Where that comes from? Because we don't just whip that out one day at 13 years old. You know what I mean? Like, I'm 13 years old. I blew out the birthday candles. Oh, I know who I am. I'm with all this innate confidence and self-worth and esteem, and I'm ready to take on the world. It doesn't work that way. I always say this: before there can be an I, there has to be a we. And what does that we represent? It represents my attachment dynamic between me and one or two of my caregivers, okay? So attachment is necessary for survival. I mean, even clinically, if you wanted to kind of qualify addiction as part of like an attachment disorder, you'd be viable to say it like that. I've never seen it skip a beat with that in all my 17 years of doing this work. Okay, so attachment is for survival. Well, yeah, because a 6-year-old kid can't just walk out the door, right, and survive. We know that, obviously, right? But deeper than that, in terms of their developmental needs, the attachment is what facilitates that. It's what enables that, okay? So if I'm in a home, right, where that's fractured, it's going to impact me detrimentally, negatively, okay? And children, remember, are very egocentric, right? They're the center of their own world. They're supposed to be also help facilitate, okay, development, to secure and reinforce that attachment. However, the catalyst with that, or the conversely, the thing with that is that whatever happens in the environment, I'm going to take ownership of, okay? Either for the positive or the negative, okay? So if everything is going okay in my family dynamic, but one day out of the blue, my dad just up and bounces, and not consciously, right, but more unconsciously, but I'm going to absorb that. I'm going to take toxic ownership of that. Something's wrong with me. Why else? What other reason or recourse would my dad just abandon me like that, leave that way? There's got to be something in me, about me, something wrong with me, something flawed or fractured with me, right? And that's what starts that negative scheme. That's what starts the early ground for those self-deprecating, self-defeating belief systems. I'm sure you'll agree with me too, right? You interview anybody that struggles with addiction, right? Hey, do you also struggle, conversely, with self-deprecating, self-defeating beliefs, at least at one point in your life? Oh, hell yeah, man, absolutely. Tons of negative thoughts and belief systems, right? Am I wired to interpret so much of the world with this negative confirmation bias in a negative way, meaning this happened, oh, that's a reflection of my self-worth, or lack thereof. Oh, of course I didn't get the job, everybody hates me, and on and on and on, right? That originates somewhere, okay? So psychologically, if I'm absorbing, the trauma, whatever's going on, whether it be the abandonment, molestation, God forbid, really pronounced physical abuse, regardless. People always think in terms like the big T traumas, we call them, right?
Yeah.
Things that are so obvious, like the molestation, things like that. Okay. Yes, definitely. But there's more to it than that. And you know, and I kind of get away from the labels of little T traumas, but if it affects you the same way, it doesn't matter. Big T, little T, right?
It doesn't matter.
Right. You know.
It's everything's perceived. It can actually even be just a perceived trauma.
Well said, man. 100%.
You know, because like it really truly is how one feels about what happened.
Yeah.
You know, and everybody's different because like you could go through some like one thing that could affect me or not affect me is what I mean.
Yeah.
Might really like throw her for a loop.
100%.
Well, it goes back to what
Well, like a pet dying.
Oh, sure.
Let's do a pet dying because like I don't for some reason get very emotionally attached to pets. So like when a pet don't judge me, bro. Everybody laughs when I say that. I mean, either that
Sociopath.
yeah, that's what I get every time.
Basically, anybody that loses like a pet, we always tell them do not even
Come
go
to
to Chad
Chad.
whatsoever because
Right.
you will.
'Cause
not
I
get
don't know
any
how to-
sympathy or empathy.
I don't-
That's it.
You're gonna get this.
You're
And that's about as
Indifference.
yeah. Like okay.
and I felt bad for my friend, his dog.
Yeah.
He's like he loves his pets too,
Sure.
man.
Yeah.
And he like took his pet and it ended up dying under
Anesthesia.
anesthesia.
Yeah, it's rough.
That's
And he wasn't expecting that. He was expecting the dog to make a full recovery. And
oh, that's even harder.
yeah. But so like that kind of stuff. And you know, but a loved one dying to me is really hard on me.
Yeah, especially for a child.
Yeah.
I mean, in any age, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I think we get not used to it, a little bit less. Like when as your parents get older, and it's like, okay, this is gonna happen.
More
Yeah.
acceptance.
Yeah. Versus like a traumatic
Or tragic.
a tragic
Sure.
death of a parent.
Unexpected.
Yes.
Unexpected,
Yeah.
abrupt.
Absolutely.
Those you know, and those two types are different types of trauma. Like
Absolutely.
the tragic parent passing is really tough versus the you know, you get to spend a little bit of time and being able to say some
point as well.
goodbyes.
And
I agree
prepare.
completely. Yeah,
But they all hurt.
and that's the point, right? They all hurt.
Well, it all goes back to like what we were saying in just being a child and growing up. I have four. There's four of us. We grew up in the same household. We have the same DNA,
Yeah.
same mom and dad. But everybody is going to perceive how we grew up very differently.
Sure.
I mean, obviously, there's going to be similarities and there's going to be stuff that is the same.
Yeah.
But ultimately, each individual perceives something very, very different. AKA, like a dog situation passing, how it affects myself and him is going to be completely different.
Her three brothers will say that she had it the best, though. They're going to all three agree.
No doubt.
That she was
for sure.
the most loved, the favorite.
Paid attention to the most.
Yep.
Interesting. Yeah. I you know,
Facts, right?
It is facts. That is true. But I always say, you know, I'm the franchise and I'm the only girl, so suck it.
That's so weird when you say that.
so, sometimes it can be like stuff like that, but you know, like it's also like the time period. You know what I mean? Like what's going on. This is where again your sense of self is developed, right?
Sure.
And I call it, when I explain it to people, I call it like the trauma profile, right? Like, you know, you got your Instagram profile page,
Sure.
right? Like my profile,
Sure.
right? My scheme and the way I interpret and my thoughts and underlying core beliefs about myself. So if there's that adversity going on in the environment, you know, the child internalizes it on themselves, and that creates those defeating core beliefs, right? And how does that show up? That can affect like your ability to connect with other people, obviously
Sure.
your self-worth, your confidence, things like that. So I always say, I think that part it begins there, if that makes sense, right? With the psychological, all right? So because it's a collective thing. So there's the first part, right? Okay, and then the next part is neurological. Okay, and this is where you get really into the nuance, right, of addiction, right, as being a brain disease. Okay, so when the brain is exposed to a lot of stress or chronic stress or traumatic events during those early fragile years of development, like I said, it changes the way the brain develops, okay? Ironically, the same two parts of the brain that are mostly impacted also while in active addiction, okay? Well, this is before any drugs in the equation, obviously, right? That frontal cortex I was talking about earlier, right? When it's exposed to high amounts of cortisol, right, and adversity or stress, whatever it might be, some kind of trauma in the environment, essentially it shuts down. Its development gets arrested. It gets atrophied of sorts, right? Okay. So that means what? Somebody can have a higher likelihood to struggle with concentrating and focusing, impulse control, all the other things I said earlier, basically in a deficit minus in reverse, basically, right? They might tend to be a little more, not only just impulsive, but more kind of reckless in their decision making, things like that, okay? So that part gets affected in that capacity, right? And even my ability to like say no, like to push the stop button, right? Because amongst everything I already described that the frontal cortex governs and is responsible for, a large part of what it does is it pushes the stop button on what you were talking about, the primal part of the brain, which is called the limbic system, the unconscious brain. It throws out, this crazy impulse. No, we're not doing that today. That's not healthy. Or no, you know what? I shouldn't eat another donut, right? Or I shouldn't do this, et cetera, et cetera. It governs that as well, okay? So that gets affected also from the stress of childhood trauma, okay? Now let's go back again, more to the limbic system, the same part, okay? When a young brain is exposed to that kind of adverse childhood experience of the trauma, it alters the way that neurons release and function, okay, and communicate in the brain. Example, the receptor sites, the available receptors that release dopamine, they start to weaken, they recoil, they break off, and they fall apart. So what does that mean in that person's young life? Before they've had any exposure to any substance whatsoever, they are already going to be in a depletion of dopamine. That same receptor, that D2 receptor, okay, because of the way the chronic influx of cortisol and other aspects that are systemic to trauma in terms of how it affects and imposes on the brain, okay. That goes for oxytocin, right, as well, serotonin as well, okay. So now we got the psychological part, right? There's a neurological part, okay. And then third, I said physiological, right? What am I referencing? The nervous system, okay. So when a child is exposed to all, again, that stress being the biggest part of it, right? It causes their nervous system to become chronically dysregulated, which means what? I'm going to have a huge tidal wave, an influx of chronic stress hormones, norepinephrine, cortisol, adrenaline that are pumping through my blood, right? And again, the continuity of that, the chronicity of that, that's where it becomes problematic. We are not designed as human beings to be in chronic fight or flight. We're not, okay? That literally can kill us systemically, even on, like we were saying earlier, right? On a cellular level.
Yeah.
Okay. Stress is supposed to be like acute. It's supposed to be temporary, right? There's a threat. It's invasive. Okay, threat's gone. Stress comes down. Well, we've understood through the studies of the adverse childhood experiences of trauma, that doesn't happen when we have childhood trauma. Basically, we stay stuck essentially, right, in layman's terms, in fight or flight, okay, until we get healing and intervention at some juncture. And especially with the unconscious brain, as it doesn't understand the concept, right, of time. That's all governed, again, by the mind, the logic, that different part of the brain, okay? So you have all that going on. You have the psychological part, the neurological, and the physiological. Again, that's where I'm developing the foundation for the predisposition, right, along with the genetic part that we already talked about, right? Okay, what happens next? Let's go back to me and Johnny, right? Okay. And same with Johnny with the weed, or like you with the meth, the same thing, okay? So I got all that going on in the background, right? And now, okay, I get my first exposure. I'm sorry, forgive me, back up for a minute. At this point, maybe 11, 12 years old, right? What did you say? You were like 11, 12? Or
okay. 12 when I was searching for something.
Okay, that's what I was referencing. Thank you. 12 years old, right? We don't necessarily understand like what's wrong, but I think if we all get into a little bit of introspection, I think all of us can identify with that. I know I sure as shit can. I didn't understand what was going on, but I knew something was off. Why do I get up every morning and I got this like sickening pit feeling in my stomach? Why? Why do I have this underlining like hypervigilance that something bad is going to happen when I can say in my reality there is nothing, viably threatening, but I feel it. And I don't just feel it emotionally, I feel it in my body. right? Seeking something, searching for something. There's a deficit, right? Like I already broke down all those things, okay? So think about how that can affect you and your schoolwork, right? Your social connections, your ability to make friends, all to navigate through all of that, right? Can prove to be difficult because of these underlying factors. Fast forward the clock, now here we are. That one, eventful day after school, we're smoking weed. Boom. Okay. We already know what happened with Johnny, right? He doesn't have that in his background, okay? The experience comes and it goes. Yes, he enjoyed it. He felt it to be satiating and satisfying, but that's it. There was nothing right? Endogenous with Johnny that made him think, crave, or desire more marijuana. Hence, back to his normal hierarchy of priorities, right? Food, prom, football practice, and whatnot. Where there's an explosion of sorts that took place in my brain the moment I got exposed to the marijuana, okay? First and foremost, psychologically, right? Just like I spoke on the other day, the first time I did heroin. You're referencing with your meth, right? This is it. This is who I want to be.
This is how I want to be for the rest of my life.
Rest of my life. So if that feeling gives me that's a really emphatic representation of everything that I'm missing or lacking on the inside.
Yep.
And it also is the first kind of protagonist to me starting to recognize, definitely unconsciously, that, okay, in order to survive what's going on intrinsically, internally, I have to reference to the external.
Sure.
And I get further and further away from the idea that, no, like I can self-soothe, I can self-regulate. No, I start to use the external to do that, okay? But in that moment when I ingest that marijuana, okay, so psychologically I get that relief. Relief from what? Myself, right? Relief from the stress, relief from my low self-worth, maybe being bullied, whatever's going to go on in my life. Oh, okay, that melts away. Okay, that melts away. Number two, all those stress hormones, my nervous system being in chronic dysregulation, the influx of all those hormones running through my body, they get mitigated. They get calmed. That goes away too, right? Now, I already said because of those adverse experiences, right, I'm already lacking that dopamine, the serotonin, the oxytocin. Boom. In one moment, not only do I get a spike of those neurotransmitters, it would look like a nuclear bomb went off in a petri dish, right? And I've seen these close-up pictures, right, of dopamine, right, in the synapse of the brain. It looks like a lightning storm, right? A massive lightning storm going off, right? You just took something exogenous, external, the drugs, and basically forced the brain, right, to do something it wasn't intended to do naturally, organically, right? That's why when it comes to addiction, it is a neurological insult. It insults, it interrupts the healthy, normal neurological makeup and functioning of the brain, okay? So again, nervous system is calmed and I get this massive spike, huge spike of dopamine. Okay, what is dopamine? First of all, yeah, okay, it's a neurotransmitter, right? But if we go around and we ask people randomly, like, hey, you heard of dopamine, right? What do you think most people probably say?
Happy.
Happy, okay.
Like the happy release into your body.
Okay. Anything
Feel
else?
good.
Feel good. I think a lot of people would probably say that, or they say like euphoria, right? Okay, pleasure. Okay. Ironically, that's the least of what it does. More than anything, more than pleasure, euphoria, it's more of a surviving, learning, teaching, motivating, incentivizing neurotransmitter. So what am I saying? That there's a huge interdependent connection between survival and dopamine. Okay. Even if I have a near-death experience, you know that stimulates dopamine?
Yeah, because it releases like the MDMA or whatever what's it called? People that all of a sudden like go to jump off a bridge, all of a sudden they get the release into their brain and then they don't want to do it anymore.
Right.
What's that called?
I'm not sure.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
I think so.
It releases. It's exactly what DMT.
Oh God, I know what you're talking about.
You know?
I can't think of it right now, but I know what you're talking about. It's to remember, right? Okay, back in the day, like you and I are out, we're hunter gathering, right?
Yeah.
And I go, hey man, look at that cool looking cat. And you're like, all right, man, let's go check it out, right? We start to pet it, almost bites our ass off. We run, we survive, right? Well, it turns out it was a saber-tooth tiger, right? Oops, fuck, right? My bad, right? So it stands out, so it's reinforced in my brain, right? That is a threat to our survival and safety, okay? And every time dopamine is released in your brain, no matter what causes it, another neurotransmitter called glutamate is also released simultaneously. Glutamate is basically, it tells the brain, it connects the dots like, okay, this behavior specifically brought us this spike of dopamine, right? It reinforces the significance of the behavior, the value or the perceived value of the behavior every time. Why do you think we a lot of times we get tripped up with like the works, like the things that can trigger us, right? The needle, the pipe, the this, the that, right? All that is connected to the glutamate, right? The things we do that bring us the dopamine.
It's crazy too, because it's like, the truth is if you've had any sobriety at all and you've had a relapse, right? The actual getting the actual on your way to get loaded is way better than the actual getting loaded.
Yep.
Love that you said that.
Like I would have to take a poop,
Yeah, same.
take a
Like,
shit.
Before a game, like before
I'll be like driving to the dope man.
Yeah. Excitement.
And all of that.
Yeah.
It was like I would have physiological response because I was having a spike of dopamine, natural dopamine, because of the other guy was remembering
Glutamate.
the glutamine.
Very good. Yeah.
Like, we're gonna get it.
We're gonna
Yeah,
we're gonna get it, and it's gonna be a big spike.
Yep.
This is what I love.
It's coming.
When I teach people about this in like groups, right? It's so awesome that you reference that because I use that as an example all the time.
Yeah.
I don't have any meth in my system right now, right? Connection calls, right? Chachi's like, yeah. Be a Jack in the Box, bro, right? I'm off and running. Oh, I got a shit. We go back. And that's exactly why.
Yeah.
So what is that? It's the anticipation of reward.
Yep.
Okay? And that now we're getting into the nuance of dopamine, right? If I'm sitting down here right now and my body is like essentially dehydrated, right? That's not enough to get me up off the chair, but dopamine is. Right, my body tells my brain, okay, secretes a little bit of dopamine to motivate me, incentivize me, also survival, to go get that water. I take the water, I'm satiated, more dopamine gets released. So anticipation of reward and in the actual reward itself.
Yeah.
Okay, right? So when that brain predisposed with all those markers and all these things that we're talking about, environment, trauma, all the above, gets that massive dopamine, the brain pays very, very close attention to that, right? Because it's not just a little spike, it's a huge spike. Okay, so here we go. This is where that evolution takes place. Like I said earlier, where it evolves into a disease of decision making.
Yeah.
And this is the part that people get utterly confused on, they get misjudged on, right? This is where, again, all those societal stigmas and even things with families not understanding, this is when all that comes into play, okay? So because of that massive spike, number one, of dopamine, what does it tell the brain? This behavior is of extreme value and significance. In terms of the brain, the way it references the act of intoxication, it would be like a hedonic experience, okay? Hedonic, like derivative of the word like pleasure-seeking hedonism, right? High value, high reward experience. But the way the brain interprets it, right? The brain basically believes like this, accordingly, that getting high, the anticipation of it, getting high, all of it is way better than it actually is. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's what the human brain is doing in regards to the drugs and the alcohol, okay? And also because at the same time, right, people that struggle with addiction, here's another way you could explain it too, to somebody that, never understood or doesn't understand. That same part of the reward center, somebody who struggles with addiction, that part of their brain really struggles with understanding. The brain struggles with the concept of pleasure, if that makes sense, right? Like, it doesn't know how to interpret pleasure. And how do we see this in the behavior, right? And this is where pathology shows up too. Okay, I've had 2 cocktails, right? Okay, it's nice, I'm relaxed, feel good, okay, But the brain of somebody who struggles with addiction, oh, okay, yeah, that's nice, but be better? 5 more.
Yeah.
And you notice what? There's never that threshold,
Never.
right? That's what I mean. It doesn't quite know how to organize around the concept or interpreting pleasure. Okay? That's part of the issue as well. And at the same time now, what's also happening? All those stress hormones I was talking about earlier, they're gone. They get mitigated by the drugs and the alcohol. Okay? That dysregulation in my nervous system, that chronic anxiety, hypervigilance, eradicated. Okay? So what just happened? If I was to put a personality to the unconscious brain, it'd be like, holy shit, we need this. This just took us out of survival mode So conversely, it is necessary for survival. When I tell people that, I say emphatically, that's what happens. I cannot stress that enough. That's exactly what the brain believes. And a new hierarchy is created. It's no longer food, sex, et cetera, no longer ding-dongs and reproduction, right? It's drugs, then maybe water, then maybe food, maybe shelter, and then maybe we'll throw sex down there at the bottom somewhere, right? Okay. What does that look like? That looks like somebody on Skid Row, right? Absence of self-preservation. Their frontal cortex is hijacked. It's atrophied. It's not working. And a reward system that now believes this drug, this alcohol is absolutely viably necessary for survival. And guess what? That's the part of the brain that is operative. That's the part of the brain that's running the show. And this is why we get this dissonance or this dichotomy. It's like, well, wait a minute. How can you say you didn't choose it? You went and did it. A decision is being made, but it's being made from that part of the brain. And guess what? That part of the brain doesn't understand, right, that you're hurting your loved ones. Mm-hmm. It doesn't regard it, doesn't get it, doesn't know it, doesn't give two shits about it. You know what it cares about? The huge internal experience, right, that's happening with acute intoxication. That's all it cares about. And the relief, right, that it brings, that dysregulated, right, that person in fight or flight, that survival individual, the relief that it brings that person, okay? And that's why you see what you see with addiction. In spite of the fact that I could die, in spite of the fact that it's caused me all this suffering, right? I'm observing what I'm doing in real time, obviously, right? But does that promote the idea that I'm in control? Absolutely not. And this is where we get off track with addiction. This is where we miss the mark. Well, you grabbed it. Yeah, I did. But my experience with it, I'm observing. I know I shouldn't, right? But that's not the part of me that's making the choice. No more different than if somebody said, you know what, back in the day, I used to get a real vicarious thrill, right, from putting my hand on a hot stove.
Sure.
Right? And I know this seems like a little redundant where I was going with this, right? But
no.
Okay, but every time I do it, I get a third-degree burn. I got to get a skin graft, right? So that creates a lot of suffering. It's pretty damn invasive, right? And no more ridiculous to the idea that I hear, again, I call this stuff like recovery rhetoric that gets passed around the rooms, places, things like that. Oh, what happened while you relapsed? Oh, yeah, man. Thursday, I just woke up. I just got a case of the fuck-its. Oh, my God. Again, I'm going to use the same word, asinine, right? That I just woke up, sound mind, sound body, and I just said, yes, you know what? Today is a lovely day to completely and utterly denigrate myself in my life. Yes, fuck it. Let's do it. That's an absence of comprehensive understanding of why the hell I'm doing what I'm doing, right? So I'm going to land it on, I got a case of the fuck-its. Does that make sense, right? It's missing all the underlying themes and root causes of what's driving the behavior, okay? And, also when that happens as well, and I was saying like the survival thing, right? I like to give like an example like this, okay? Let's imagine that I had like a big, like one of those gumball machines, right? You might see somewhere, right? They got all the multicolored gumballs, okay? Let's say there's a gumball machine in the corner, and let's say like all the white gumballs are representative of drugs and alcohol. Okay, now when you objective, you're not the person struggling with addiction. You look at the gumball machine, you see multi-colors, the whole thing, right? Okay, when I look at the gumball machine in terms of like my brain and what I'm referencing, yeah, the other gumballs are there. What do you think my brain sees? And the only thing it sees,
White.
That's it.
Let me ask you a question, because you're giving a lot of information, and a lot of it I would consider medical, scientific information. Let's just jump and just transition for a minute.
Sure.
Where does spirituality lie inside of this disease?
So good. So glad you brought that up, because honestly, I think that's so obviously important, and I live that. Obviously, a huge part of why I even do what I do.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, I'm here because of God. I'm His instrument, right? Okay. But often when I'm like describing all these parts of it, sometimes I even forget to go there. So I really appreciate that you brought that up. I absolutely believe for a lot of directions with this. Do I believe 100% that God can do for us what we can't do for ourselves? 1,000%. Do I think God, have I lived it, right, in so many different areas, not just with addiction in the past, but that God can heal us in that capacity? 100%. Even with my health issues, right, over the last 3 years. Yeah, I'm living proof. Nobody should literally be dead more than me and what I've endured in the last 3 years. So yes, I believe God can do that, right? So there's obviously a huge connection to that piece, in spite of all those things, right? Now, in my experience, both personal, clinical, just what I've seen, do I see a lot of scenarios where it's like, I didn't have to go through all these things. I didn't have to go through this process and God just zapped me better. No, I don't really see that either. Okay. It's all part of what's called like a bigger plan, I believe, right? Just like when I shared my experience last time I was on here, like what God started to do for me, but I had to let God in. I had to give God permission because, I got the gift of free will. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I have to choose that. Okay. The other part of it, right, in terms of this is, let's talk about the other healing part of it. Right? So many of us, we have relationship attachment wounds, right? Not only in childhood, but then later on in our adult life and things like that. If you walk in any treatment center and you say, raise your hand if you've had a toxic relationship, want to bet 9 out of 10 hands are going to go up?
For sure.
And the one that didn't was just
Lying.
denial, not maybe.
Yeah.
Doesn't even recognize it. It's still in it.
Yeah.
Deep
still,
in
there you
it.
go.
Probably still in it.
Still in it. Or starting the rehab room.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
And, well, okay, is that just the coincidence of the century? No, it's because both those things are rooted in the same cause, okay? Similar to why most people that struggle with addiction are also codependent. Same reason, same root cause. Not necessarily the genetic part of it, right? But the adverse childhood experience, which is absolutely what codependency is born out of, where the abandonment of self derives from. Okay? So again, with the God thing, like, I know for me, I had a hard time, accepting or letting people in to help me, love on me, et cetera, right? And for me personally, and I recommend this for everybody, I don't impose it on people, right? Hopefully inspire and share that so much of my healing was in the spiritual part, in the God part, right? Embracing and kind of organizing around the idea that there's a God and he loves me unconditionally. Unconditionally. And also what I personally believe is that, there is not a damn thing that I can do, right, on the face of this planet to earn my way into heaven. Mm-hmm. It's called grace.
Yeah.
And you step back from that too. Even just meditate on that for a minute, right? Grace. Like, in spite of myself, in spite of my sin, in spite of my mistakes, in spite of all aspects of my humanity, right, that I'm awarded this grace. And yeah, obviously I have a role. There's reciprocity in this relationship for sure. I got to, play my role too, right? But I think for so many of us, again, that struggle with addiction, okay, to kind of base foundation so much of our healing and, basically, in essence, what I didn't get in childhood, that lack, that deficit, I can get in that spirituality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can this is a loaded question.
Pun intended. Okay.
I mean, it really is.
Yeah.
Can somebody heal from addiction without God? And when I say God, can I use higher power? Can I use spirituality to not scare people that you need Jesus Christ? I mean, just because,
So just say higher power, yeah.
Can we heal? Can we heal our addiction without spirituality?
Oh, that's
It's a loaded question.
for sure. Yeah.
No.
My answer, I don't. Yeah. Well, there you go.
I did not ask you, Natalie, and I don't.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I don't mean anything. I'm definitely not a clinician. I am not by any even capable of answering that question. But
Yes, you are. You have the
What do you mean?
disease.
Yeah.
And
I know,
and
but-
you can have an opinion on whether you can
Absolutely.
or you can't.
Well-
I have an opinion on it. I just want to.
yeah,
I just
of course,
want.
someone that's actually certified and
I just want his.
yeah.
I agree with you. I don't think you can. Do I think you can? Do I think you can accumulate a certain degree of healing?
Yeah.
Yeah. But will you absolutely be restored,
And set free
set
and
free,
peaceful? No.
recovered?
Recovered?
What am I recovering? I'm recovering. That's what I tell people all the time. I'm recovering my authenticity, more specifically, the God in me, my reclaiming my divine birthright.
Sure.
That what am I? And I've been telling people this for 17 years, right? Few things. I always have my 3 pillars, right? Okay. Knowledge is power. I'm not the proprietor of that, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You are not your disease. And number 3, that you are, and I'm not getting into religion, but just, again, spirituality, but you are a child of God with infinite value. Period.
Amen.
That's it.
Yeah, and I...
Wait, I want to tell you why I say what I said. Why I
Okay.
said no.
Yeah, okay.
Is because I think, and you have probably witnessed this yourself from like your own story and my own story of trials and tribulations and the trial and error and all the things. Can someone maintain sobriety and put down the drink and the drug without spirituality or a higher power? Yes. Will they have all of the things like the book promises or things where you're supposed to live what I consider a purposeful life that God intended us all to do, to live at our full maximum purpose?
Yeah.
No, because I think that then how are you running your life? What are you based upon those desires or what's steering the ship? You? Yeah. Where I think that is where it differs, because I've seen a lot of people maintain their like abstinence, but they're miserable. Yeah. And like that is not a way that God intended us to live. We're supposed to be happy, joyous, and free. And so I think that you can only maintain and achieve that. And obviously it's not perfect, but to actively seek a higher power of whatever that may be in your personal life. You know, it doesn't have to be Jesus Christ. It doesn't have to be God, whatever it is, but it just has to be not to you.
That's blasphemy for you to say it can't be Jesus Christ.
Why?
I mean, that it doesn't have to be, huh?
It has to be
I'm
for
just
me.
I'm just being a crazy Christian.
I know.
For a second.
No, but I agree with you.
Because I've been a dry drunk, and it is, I wanted to kill myself, so I ain't going back. Like, no, thank you. I'd rather not.
So basically, we all have the same the same opinion, because like I too believe that you can not drink or use without a God. Yeah. I believe that you can do a ton of healing, physically, mentally, emotionally, but you can because there's one more thing. There's one more thing, and it's a big thing if you know about it. And that's why I brought it up, because all of those things that you talked about are facts about our brain,
evidence-based science.
Yes.
Evidence-based science about this disease that we have. There's one step further that no doctor, no scientist, no man can find out about. We can know all these things about our brain, and the fact that if, when I use meth for a prolonged amount of time, I literally turn off. There are brain scans, brain studies that I turn off my frontal lobe. Like, it turns off. It is not functioning. That is scientifically proven. Take away the substances, that starts to turn back on. Yeah. But I don't get to have that inner peace that Chad has today because of the spirituality piece that I believe Alcoholics Anonymous got very much correct when they wrote this book, this amazing book that we have. We actually have a spiritual malady, and we have all the other things that you talked about. Yeah. Those are all reasons why, the substance, when we use it, it takes over. And it's not like my sister's never done meth. I'm sure my brother's done meth. I have friends in high school that we were out blazing the fucking meth pipe, twirling it on the weekends, and they would stop after the weekend was over. Right. I never stopped. Yeah. From the day I started, I never stopped. I mean, it looked different because it doesn't look like it looks now, because once, you find the needle and the disease progresses.
Whole different thing.
But all through high school, I didn't necessarily look like an addict.
Right.
Even though I used every single day of my life. I snorted it. I sought it out. I had it all the time. But yeah, at the end of the day, man, I was emotionally, mentally, physically, fucking cognitively, and spiritually completely bankrupt, and fucking had tore my life down to the ground. Yeah. You still need to heal all these things, and I'm with you, man, because like, okay, do I believe that some people can walk into the church and Jesus Christ heals them? I do. I believe that too.
Yeah.
I believe that happens for some. Mm-hmm. There's no possible way it would have happened for me, because let me tell you why. First off, you walked me into that church when I was at the end of my disease. Mm. Like, I felt more like I was Satan, and there was no Jesus Christ was gonna. I didn't believe. Yeah. You have to believe.
100%. Yeah.
Like you have to believe that you're going to be healed to even be healed. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was this gradual, very slow process that continues to happen all the way even to this morning, of me picking up my readings and doing my work, because I don't ever want to stick a needle back in my arm.
Right. Yeah. And not only that, but I think there's like, at least for me, there's been like levels of growth and evolutions.
Yeah.
Spiritually. Like, again, what I went through with all this stuff with my Crohn's disease the last 3 years, like, and people ask me, like, what do you take away from that is positive? And I say, well, my faith.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying I didn't have faith before.
Sure.
Obviously I did, but nowhere near the caliber I do now. We talk about...
Or what about strength?
Strength?
The strength like that God provided you to get through that.
To endure that?
Sure, because I think the belief alone in turning to God, regardless, maybe you were mad at times, I'm sure you were, which he asks you to come to him and tell him. I mean, the way that I have my relationship with God is I talk to him just like one of my homies.
Same.
And so it's very, to me, a testament of what he will walk and bring you through, because at those moments of being in a hospital bed and being depleted from like a cellular level, as well as not being able to do physical things that we are naturally sometimes, even myself, take for granted, of just like getting up and going to the restroom by myself, especially watching like my older like my parents. It's like sometimes getting wrapped up into being able to pick up a drink, be able to use a fork, stuff like that is easily
taken for granted.
Exactly. And then now look at you sitting, and you look like I would have never, just meeting you for the first time last time you came on here, I would have never in a million years thought in the last 3 years you were literally like almost on death's door.
More than once
And continuously, of like almost coming out of it and then going right back into possibly not making it, or having to then emotionally handle things happening to your body that you are not used to. That alone is PTSD and takes a toll on people's people's minds.
There was, you never probably would think, but when I've actually been the closest to Christ for me in my life was over the last 3 years, but not just in general, but moments where I didn't have any more.
Sure.
Okay. I consider myself pretty strong, physically, mentally, emotionally, pretty damn resilient. But I didn't have it in me, and I was tapped, and regardless of whatever it was going on,
totally.
Okay, and I remember I can think of like 3 separate occasions where it's like 1 a.m. I got all these symptoms going on, the pain, all this stuff, and I just sob, like something out of a movie, I mean, like that just deep chest sobbing, and where just all of that is coming out, and it's like, why are those my favorite moments? Well, I can't even feel it as I say it, but I know he was literally right next to me. Right next to me. And even in those moments, even after like the release of it, right, came, insight and wisdom. Like, hey, Geoffrey, you know what? I didn't cause you this pain. I trusted you with it. Whoa. And I started reading like Isaiah and Job in the Bible, and it really started to make more sense. It's, no, God didn't cause it, but do I think he allows certain things to happen?
Sure.
Yeah, because he sees the trajectory, right? He sees the bigger picture, right? Now, for me, it's like, yeah, not only just my faith walk, but my ability now to be able to just go, you know what? I can't do any more in this situation, Lord. I got radical acceptance over here, giving it to you. And it may not be my way. Probably it's not going to be, okay? And that's all right, because I know that I am loved. So I don't challenge what you do in my life. I don't challenge if you take me over here and sit there, because you know what? You're my Father who loves me, and you know better. You see more. You understand on a level I could never. I trust that. Like, he earned that with me, right? And I also allow that, right? And everything I've gone through with the Crohn's disease and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah, to where if I get stressed out, I can say, and I know I'm good. And not just say it because people tell me to say that's what I should say, right? All that bullshit. No, to feel it, to know it, right? Mm-hmm. And I have one more thing that I get to share with people to hopefully inspire them. Like, hey, if you walk with God and you have that spirituality, you really can walk through. You can walk through hell. You literally can. You can walk through things that you probably weren't meant to survive.
Yeah.
And come out the other side, better. Yeah.
Restored.
Yeah. Restored. That was a word that I remember when I was doing step 2 and restoration and restored, and I had to. My sponsor made me look up all these definitions, every word, and I had to write the definition. But I want to go back. I want to kind of piggyback off of what you're saying, because, like, first off, like, I don't know. I don't think that we chose this path or this life. I actually do believe that God chose this for, like, people like us, because, like, had I raised my hand at whatever age and been like, no, I want the suffering path, I would have been like, hell no, I'll take the other road. Of
course.
I'll take the different road, but fully accept and love the fact that I have had the tough road, the trials and the tribulations, because, like, if you were to write a movie, it's just even about yourself and the man that you wanted to be at the very end of that movie, what would that script look like in between? If you were going to be this badass, strong, amazing man that can handle and withstand and endure everything in life, what fucking path would you give yourself? The one that God gave us.
This one, yeah.
The suffering, the pain. Because the only way you get to become that man is for everything that you ever gone through. And, like, man, God put you through that, because, like, I've asked my team before, because they've seen some shit, right? And I'm like, in the weight of that I'm carrying on my shoulders, there's been times when I ask God, are you sure you have the right guy? Yeah. Like, are you sure that I'm the one? Right. And I've said that to, like, I feel like it was G, to be honest with you. Like, I said, and he's like, 'cause, like, are you sure? And he's like, yeah, because when you're at your weakest, you get on your knees and you ask him for the strength to continue on. And God knows that you're going to do that. Mm-hmm. Because, like, there's been days where I just, like, didn't want to fucking do it anymore. Yeah. And it's on those days when but I don't want to let anybody down. I don't want to,
there you go.
And I don't want to let God down. I don't want to let my family down. I don't want to let myself down anymore.
Sure. But ultimately, it's like it is about us, obviously, but it's about what we do with all this, right? It's about the other person. It's about the other person. You know, if it didn't roll out that way, I would probably have a big, I wouldn't stop loving or believing in God, but I'd probably have a big, what the fuck?
Sure.
Right? Like, you know, why? You know, but when you connect it to like doing things like, in other words, look, you could have twice the amount of letters after your name that I do, right? And you are, and put yourself in an arena, right, to do like psychological therapy, healing, whatever, and not be able to help and heal anybody.
Yeah.
I say this, and I will always stand by it, that like healers are anointed by God. You know, academia doesn't make you a healer.
No,
Okay?
I believe that too.
You know, it is absolutely what you've gone through and people feel it, they sense it, you know. And again, I'm making it about me, but just the point, anybody goes through that. But, you know, like me sitting down with somebody, opposed to like, and nothing wrong with these people either, again, but like, if I was like Johnny Poindexter with the bow tie, you know what I mean? Tell me about your mother, right? No, you know, that can create, you know, it's like the adversity that you share, the rapport that can be built, right? The rapport creates the trust, and the trust facilitates the vulnerability, and the vulnerability facilitates the healing, right? And that's all part of it.
I mean, you know, he lets us go through that stuff. I mean, we're the most qualified.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Absolutely.
The most qualified. I know for a fact that on December 9th of 2000, God left me here. He could have taken me home, and it by all means, everything that happened that day, I should not have walked away from that day. And it wasn't that exact day that I realized it. It was on the day that my daughter was born, so December 14th. So the accident happened on December 9th. I should not have walked away from this accident. Nobody should have.
Right.
The car was a mangled piece of metal.
Crazy.
We didn't have airbags back then.
Oof.
I went end over end down an embankment off the 10 freeway in Pomona. I remember the violence of the crash. Violent.
Wow.
The day my daughter was born, and I say this all the time, and this day is coming up. What's today? December 4th.
10 days.
10 days will be 25 years from the day that I realized that God left me here for a purpose. I found my purpose on December 14th of 2000. And it was to be a father, but it was much bigger than that. It was to help other people that suffer with the same thing that I suffer from, including her. She suffers from the same thing that I suffer from.
Yeah.
And you know, although my path has been however it's brought me to this very perfect time right here in this very moment, you know, because this is where God lives. God lives only right here in this podcast right now in this very moment. He doesn't live 5 minutes from now. He doesn't live 5 minutes ago. He's right here in this room. In this very moment, if you're watching this podcast right now, which will be days from now, but it'll be your moment. As long as you're in the here and now, that's where spirituality lies. If you're right here in this room, guess what? We're not worried about anything.
Yeah.
Other than this moment that we're having with each other.
Yeah.
And that is where God lives. That's spirituality. That's God.
I agree with you. Encapsulated in the present moment.
Yeah.
That's where everything takes place. That's where change is the unknown. That's where all the magic happens.
It's the magic.
All of it. Yeah.
It's the beauty.
Yeah. That's how it works, right? It's like, you know, encapsulated in the present moment, a second at a time, an hour at a time, a day at a time, you know, and you invest into that, you're fully available and present for that. Well, it unfolds into a day, right? And a month and a year, you know, and the future. So the better future is built by my capacity to be fully invested, right, in the now, in the present.
And I want to point out one last thing for me to everybody.
It's his birthday.
Whose?
My birthday, actually.
It's his birthday.
Yeah.
Fuck, your birthday. Happy
And
birthday.
he's meeting
Thanks,
his
bro.
kids, so that's why his
alarm
just
went off?
No,
Okay.
no, that just, it was something else. You're good. You're good.
So
Yeah.
that- wanna
Thank you.
respect
But
his
you-
time.
No, I'm fine.
You said
Go as long as you want.
just a few minutes ago that you know where you're at in your spiritual life and with
Yeah.
God, that you're okay no matter where He puts you.
Yeah.
That is one of the most beautiful and freeing places to be. It's called God's will, right? We all pray for it every day. I do the Alcoholics Anonymous a third step prayer every single morning without a miss.
Same. Actually.
Because like I want to be, that's the only way I'm okay.
Yeah.
Because like I told you, I from as far back as I can remember, I have not felt okay in this body.
Mm-hmm.
But and it's because of fear and anxiety and all this stuff. But when I'm in God's will, I'm not worried about that.
Yep.
And the faith you talked, and then you talked about the faith, right? And you gained so much more through your disease, not your alcoholism, not your
Crohn's,
addiction,
Mm-hmm.
but your Crohn's disease,
Yeah.
and almost dying,
Mm-hmm.
and still being faithful, and you're pretty healthy today, correct?
Thank God. Better than I have been the last 3 years. Yeah.
You know, He doesn't show up. I said this just yesterday. He doesn't show up at noon. You know, he doesn't show up at 6 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
He shows up at 11:59 and 59 seconds.
True.
Because that's what time it needed to happen.
Yeah. No, just like those moments I was telling you about, right? Where it was like really emotionally charged, right?
Mm-hmm.
But his presence was overwhelming in a beautiful way and undeniable, you know. And I've never had like I don't know. I have had a few moments of, meaning like where that faith was just compounded in a healthy way, you know. And it was always, of course, you know, the moments where I didn't have anything left, you know. And you said the strength too, you know. But okay, like I don't see a way over this mountain. I can't, right? And I know right now I'm humble in the fact that I don't have any more to get over that mountain, right? And the little moments and whatever it was, it might have been a conversation with somebody else, you know. Never ceases to amaze me how he'll even use like stupid shit on social media to like, you know, hey, you know, I mean, did you catch that? That's for you, bud. You know, yeah, it blows my mind in that capacity. But yeah, you know, and even like we were talking earlier, like, yeah, he can heal you in certain things. And yeah, and when you listen to my whole story with the Crohn's, you here, you know, I've been septic like 5 times in the last 3.5 years.
insane.
Which
Right.
people don't know what it means to be septic.
Yeah.
When, just that if a doctor ever comes to you and says you are septic, that actually means that you have a 50% chance of surviving being septic.
Absolutely accurate. Yeah.
And the more septic you get, the less the more that percentage goes down.
Yep, 100%.
You know that, and I say this, and I with knowledge from the fact that like I grew up in a house full of medicine. My dad is a doctor. My dad's a physician, a medical doctor. My mom and every single one of my sisters are nurses. My doctors and nurses either kill you or they keep you alive, and it depends on how good they are.
I haven't heard that. That's pretty accurate.
If you ever are in the hospital, you want my sisters at your bedside. Totally. They have my dad was so septic. I was in Fiji on my honeymoon. My dad was so septic, and they didn't want to tell me while I was there. They said he was septic. He was going into. They said he had a 50%, and the truth was that he had a 10% chance of surviving.
Yeah.
But it's like my sisters are in there and they know, and they don't let like you said it out there and out there. You have to know how to advocate for yourself with the doctor, with the nurses,
with everything.
With everything.
Yeah.
It is crucial.
Yeah.
I will say that the United States of America has the best emergency medicine in the world. You know, we're top notch.
I agree with you.
Preventative medicine, we are not the best. We are at that. When you get to that level, we're run by big pharma, and big pharma wants you sick. Big pharma wants you on the pills.
I agree.
The food industry wants you fat. They want you they work together in congruency together. The health insurance works together with them, and they all want you sick.
Mm-hmm.
No, and I live that, right? The preventative part, right? I told you the story and how my first GI doctor totally not only misdiagnosed me, dropped the ball completely. And now that I have the perspective of advocacy and knowing what it should look like, oh my God, it's crazy, But as far as care, couldn't agree with you more. Like literally without, God, of course, obviously, but Hoag Hospital saved my life.
Yeah.
For a fact.
Yeah.
And they're rated one of the best hospitals, but from my experience, like just from the nurses, the doctors, all of it, the surgeons, the guys who did my surgery, like, one little thing, and I'm not even talking about maybe like killing me, but if he had made one little mistake here or there, too much scar tissue, this and that or that, or maybe I would have had to keep that ostomy bag,
Forever.
one thing, I mean, when the guy did my reconstruction surgery, he said, I woke up, I was so nervous because he was like, I'm not going to fully know until I get in there. And again, this where like the fear and the enemy is just like, what if this, what if that, right? That. And you're like, no. I know you're going to take me through this. I know you will. And if something, whatever happens, I know you're going to give me whatever I need to get through that, right? I just got to have that step, that investment. But, I was so nervous, like I'm going to wake up and it's going to be there or it's not. I remember I woke up and I was like, oh, like I didn't want to look. Oh, God, thank you, right? Yeah, that was, you can imagine like what that was like, to have an ostomy bag and then wake up and it's gone, And he's like, well, I did it. He goes, but it was close because you had so much scar tissue from your initial experience, you know what I mean? And your colon perforating and if anymore, I wouldn't be able to do it. I had to really work around a lot and whatnot. So, yeah. And you want to hear the craziest thing about this? It's like with this story. And this is the part that I love to share, right? And sometimes I forget because hopefully it can inspire somebody else to give themselves permission to like let God in, and separate earthly relationships from a spiritual relationship. I think a lot of people get caught up in too, But I told you I was initially diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, right? And then later, no, it's Crohn's. Okay. Well, when I had the surgery, I thought I was done, like it's over. Because if you have ulcerative colitis, it only affects your colon. Colon gone, disease gone, you're good. So you imagine how good I was feeling, right? I'm back in the gym and hitting it, right? And then I get sick again. And once you've been septic like twice, you know exactly what it feels like. And I was like, oh, fuck. There's that feeling again. Right to the ER. Yep, you're septic. We're taking you back. He admitted me, scoped me again. And the thing, basically the pouch that they created to kind of serve as my colon, they call it a J pouch, like I said. The doctor was like, yeah, I'm sorry, but you have 10 2-millimeter ulcers growing all over that pouch. And if you had ulcerative colitis, that wouldn't be happening. So you have Crohn's disease. You were misdiagnosed. And I remember I was like, somebody ran me over with a fucking semi. You imagine going through all that and you think you're, oh, I made it. I'm good. And then, boom. No. That's another one again. And holding on to your faith then. Yeah. But look what God does. Ironically or not, right? A year later, and I'm finally okay. And I've had like 4 surgeries too in the last 3.5 years, Crohn's related, other issues, whatnot. But anyway, I have a great surgeon, also part of Hoag Hospital, and one day she was telling me, she's like, that, if Dr. Lee, because I went to CAC Hospital in USC to get my reconstruction because I wanted the best. Normally I'm so biased with Hoag. I'm like, no, I'm not going anywhere, But he said, no, he's the best in the country right now for that. Anyway, my surgeon here said, and I forget how it came up in a conversation. This is like a year later, right? And she's like, if Dr. Lee had known that you had Crohn's disease, he never would have done your surgery. And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, yeah, because most people with Crohn's disease, their pouches don't last. It gives away, if the disease isn't kept at bay. Meaning most people, if they have a J pouch, eventually they'll be back on the bag, and even like hearing that is terrifying, right? But the point being, he goes, he never would have done the surgery. And it like it hit me. It's like, okay. So the very thing that made me feel like I got ran over by a semi truck is the very thing that allowed me to have that surgery.
Yeah.
And to have no pouch.
No bag.
No
Bag.
Yeah.
Bag.
He's
bag.
got a pouch.
Bag.
Yeah, to me that's God just showing up and go, yep, here I am, and I'm not worried about it because I know he'll keep coming through for me. I mean, I'm never been this healthy as I am now in the last 3.5 years, but
And it's your birthday.
It's your birthday, man. We appreciate you coming down on
Wait,
your
but
birthday.
before we go, you have to say where people can find
thank
you. And all of the things.
Okay, thank you. So I have my business, right, is Pain into Purpose. So you can find me on TikTok and Instagram. It's pain_in_purpose. I'm just finally at a point where I'm really growing it and posting every day again. With all the health stuff, I kind of departed from that for a little while. And I also have the same name on TikTok. You can find me there as well. I work as a contractor at Arc Recovery right now. That's the only place I'm working at. Other than that, I just have my private practice. So, and not limited to people with addiction. Anybody that needs just some life stuff, relationship stuff, trauma stuff, addiction stuff, anything like that, relationship issues. You can just message me directly at Pain into Purpose.
Nice.
And thank both of you again for allowing me to come on here, not once but twice.
Yes.
I have nothing but admiration and respect for what you do. I think you guys are definitely real and authentic, and I know you do it from your heart. And I can always sense that in people, and I think everybody else, that translates to everybody that watches, and it matters. It matters.
Thanks.
It really does. I know like the building, the pot, all,
Sure.
but it matters. The essence of and the heartbeat of what you do and why you do it. It echoes, it reverberates. So, and it's an honor.
Thank you.
And to be able to share what I do and my passion. Thank you for enduring my long-windedness.
Oh no, it's great. It's really good.
But again, it's just like
We
I
got
said,
like 4 hours of
oh shit.
Footage with you from the first two.
Yeah.
Right, Em?
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, hopefully it's again that lack of insight. Hopefully
Yes.
one person hears it, they go, "Oh
That's
wow,
right.
I can approach this totally different with my
For
son,
sure.
my daughter." Yeah. Also, if any any family members hear this and they need any kind of guidance, whatever, please, message me.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So thank you guys.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate you so much. All right.